Shrouded in secrecy and mystique, Sleep Token are a band who, despite doing things their own way, oftentimes being an almost antithesis of what would lead to popularity and success, they have fast become one of the biggest names in the heavy music scene. Hi, my name is Zach Redrup, this is the It's Not a Phase podcast, and in this video I'm going to bring you the story of Sleep Token. From their very humble and unclear beginnings to the arena-filling and Metallica-competing group you know them as today. Every show is a ritual, the crowd or the congregation there to worship, and their emails and social media posts kind of remind me of when Joey Tribbiani discovers what a thesaurus is for the very first time.
I used a thesaurus.
On every word?
Yep.
But before we get into it, let me make it very clear that I will not be unveiling the identity of any member of Sleep Token. Their anonymity is part of their lore and is a wish of both the band and the fans, which I'm going to withhold and respect. Also, this will be a video just going into the band's history since their inception, and I'll only be dipping into the lore here and there to provide some context. If you're after a deep dive of any lore on the band, then there are plenty of videos that already do that, which will do a much better job than I can, and there's also a dedicated subreddit too. And finally, please help me out by hitting subscribe, hitting the like button, and share this video around if you enjoy it. Now with that out of the way, let's get started. This is the story of Sleep Token. Sleep Token are an anonymous mass collective who formed in London in 2016. The band and its overarching general lore is based around the concept with an ancient deity known as Sleep. Sleep has decided to use the frontman, known as Vessel, as the mouthpiece for its stories and messages, which it then conveys through the songs, who approached Vessel in a dream. The ancient origins of Sleep is something that's touched on here and there subtly throughout the band's career in its imagery, such as using archaic runes and symbols in its images and typography. The band's lineup is then completed by other anonymous members who are simply referred to as numbers. 2 is on drums, 3 on bass, and 4 is on guitar. Each of these members act as somewhat vessels of their own, using their own instruments to help convey the messages from Sleep through the music, hence the name Sleep Token. Though it's never been made crystal clear due to their mysterious nature as a band and also sparse interviews throughout their career, it is believed that only Vessel and 2 were the official full-time members of the band at its inception, with the other members joining later down the line when live shows and touring had to come into the picture. The band made their presence known to the world for the very first time with their debut single, Thread the Needle, which was released on September 8th, 2016. This is when we also saw the very first iteration of Vessel's mask, which compared to later updated versions is very basic, covering his face entirely other than the eyes, with an S and T carved in red on the front of the face. There was also a live variant of the mask, which was exactly the same, other than the area surrounding the mouth being removed to allow Vessel to sing into the microphone clearly and directly. November 10th then saw the release of the band's second single, Fields of Elation, with an accompanying visualizer, and in that video we basically see Vessel's mask being created from rock and earth. Less than a month later, the band released their third single, When the Bow Breaks, and with it they completed the release of their 3-track debut EP, One. The original physical release of the EP contained a further handful of tracks, each of a different piano arrangement for the 3 songs already on there, which have since also been made available on the band's Bandcamp page. Going into 2017, on February 28th, the band released a cover of Outkast's popular single, Hey Ya, putting their melancholic and moody spin on the more upbeat original. In May, the band signed their first label deal, signing up to the independent UK label, Basic Records. Later that same month, on May 19th, the band did their very first, albeit written interview with Louder. Though admittedly the answers given in the interview are basically very vague and just don't really give much into the actual inner workings of the band, it essentially highlights that the band are there to put focus on the music itself and not any individual member or members of the band. The day after that very first interview, on May 20th, the band released a brand new single called Calcutta. With the video for the song, this is the first time that fans see and are aware of any other members being involved in Sleep Token apart from Vessel. Continuing with ticking off many firsts in their career in 2017, Sleep Token went on to make their live debut at the Black Heart in London on June 17th. Keep in mind that at this point in time, it's not entirely clear if anyone else is involved in the project apart from Vessel when preparing for this show, due to the anonymous nature of the band. Just a couple of days after the show, on June 19th, the band then released another single called Nazareth.
I'll see you when the wrath comes.
The band were also originally on the lineup for that year's UK Tech Festival, but unfortunately they had to pull out and were ultimately replaced by the Parallax Method. On July 21st, the band released their aptly titled second EP, 2. This was another 3-track EP containing the last 2 singles they released, Calcutta and Nazareth, and another brand new song called Jericho.
Something in the way you lay.
Following the release of the 2 EP, the band went on to spend the rest of the year by playing 2 more shows in London. One show was supporting Motorpsycho in October, and one in November with Perturbator.
Let's talk about.
Towards the beginning of 2018, Sleep Token went on to support Loathe and Hold an Absence during their co-headline tour of the UK. Opting for a selection of different support acts on select dates, Sleep Token would support the bands on their Manchester and London dates of that run. After a bunch of searching, the earliest live footage that I could find of the band performing was during that run on the Manchester date, where they played the song Nazareth. You can also see in the background of the video an additional 5th member playing the keyboards and piano parts live for the band, and in some songs they would also provide backing vocals. This member will be referred to as espera, which translate to wait in Spanish, and as the size of the band and their shows continued to grow, so would this backing role, expanding to a trio at the time of this video. Now, espera are unique to the Sleep Token rule for a few different reasons. One is that they're technically not a part of the band away from a live setting and touring setting, so likely not a significant part of the overarching lore of the band, but more significantly, all 3 of them have publicly provided their identities unmasked online. In fact, they have their own social media page and have worked with a handful of other artists independently away from Sleep Token, including Malevolence and Nightlife. Anyway, returning back to Sleep Token's timeline in 2018, on April 8th, the band performed at the iconic Maida Vale Studios in London for the BBC Radio 1 rock show with Daniel P. Carter. Not too long after that, on June 3rd, the band released their one-off single, Jaws. This was the first single from the band to start giving them some notable and significant traction within the scene, and it came ahead of several festival appearances that would be happening for the band that summer, including an appearance at Camden Rocks, Download Festival, UK Tech Fest as their secret act that year, and closing up their festival summer at that year's Reading and Leeds Festival, performing on the pit stage on the day that Kings of Leon were headlining the main stage. That same weekend, the band announced what would be their first ever headline show, which would be held at St Pancras Old Church in London. An intimate venue and a completely seated show, it managed to sell out in just 30 seconds. The band kept this momentum going, and on October 8th they released their second single of that year, The Way That You Were.
When you think I don't notice.
This single also came with a video, which was filmed at St Pancras Old Church in London, where they were about to perform their first ever headline show. That show was held just a few days later, and was their 11th show ever as a band. And with it, they capped off their 2018 in style and triumph.
Let's talk about.
After a fairly quiet first half of the year in 2019, the band announced that they had signed a new label deal with Spine Farm Records. Spine Farm Records is an offshoot label from Universal Records and boasts a lineup of bands like Creeper, Bullet for My Valentine, Protest the Hero, Black Veil Brides, and many more. At the same time of the news of the signing in June, the band also announced their debut album was on the way, called Sundowning. And on top of that, they also released its opening track and first single, The Night Does Not Belong to God. It's also during the cycle of this album where Vessel started donning a brand new mask. This time the mask had 6 eye holes, a more elaborate red sigil, and was more cloak-like in appearance. Though, as before with the first mask, when performing live this would differ slightly. Still donning the new sigil and 6 eyes, but being a bit more solid and with the area around the mouth removed for him to be able to sing clearly. The band's first show that year was in July, supporting Baby Metal. They were also nominated for Best UK Breakthrough Band at 2019's Heavy Music Awards, but ultimately lost to Dream State. And whilst all this was going on, the band embarked on their first ever headline tour of the UK and Europe, including a set at that year's Octan Gen Festival. Returning to their album Sundowning, Sleep Token stuck to their general unconventional nature and approach as a band so far in terms of its rollout strategy. They put out a new song from the album every 2 weeks, slowly drip feeding each and every track on the album until its eventual release on November 21st. Each song came with its own visualizer and its own limited merch rollout too, truly giving each song its own time in the spotlight, treating each one as if it was its own pinnacle single. While certainly unconventional, this was a really effective strategy for the band, allowing each song to get single level treatment and streams from their fans. In sync with the meaning of the album's title, Sundowning, each track on its day of release also became available at the time of sunset in the UK. Along with this, a rune or sigil was also attached to each song and its accompanying merch, tying into the band's overall concept of being connected to an ancient god and, evidently, an ancient language. Much like all of their material up to this point, Sundowning was recorded with producer George Lever at his studio G1 Productions in Somerset. During the time of the album's release, the band were also on their first tour of North America, supporting issues with Polyphia and Little Aaron. And just as things started to gain momentum, 2020 happened, bringing a halt to a normal album cycle, along with many tour plans that they had, including Knotfest and Download Festival that year. Though they did manage to slip in a headline tour across the UK at the very start in January. However, like most bands and artists for very obvious reasons, 2020 was a mostly quiet year for Sleep Token, but in June they did release a deluxe version of Sundowning. Along with the full original album of Sundowning, it also contained additional songs, consisting of reworkings of a couple of tracks, along with a Billie Eilish cover and a Whitney Houston cover too. The performances for each of the additional tracks were each referred to as The Room Below, though during the lockdown, Vessel had worked with Hold an Absence vocalist Lucas Woodland on a secret collaboration track. As Lucas himself says, it's very unlikely that that track will ever see the light of day. And when asked to expand on it in an interview, Lucas confirmed that it's just a rough demo sitting on his computer.
We would be kicking ourselves if we didn't pull you up on a tweet
Someone
that you put out.
out the other day.
Okay.
Which,
So, to quote yourself, that you have worked alongside Vessel from Sleep Token, but that collaboration will never see the light of day.
But yeah, basically, just to put it to bed, during the pandemic, myself and Vessel just chatted. The second ever Sleep Token show was supporting us and Loathe.
oh, amazing.
So, really from the inception, Sleep Token have kind of, we've been there and they've been there, so we share the same manager and stuff. So there's lots of through threads, but we did a collab on a song. The less I say, the less annoying it'll be over the years to knock it away. But we did a collab, and it was very much like first takes, you know what I mean, and just bouncing back and forth, and nothing ended up coming of it, but it was really good.
Though this isn't the first time that the two bands have worked together in the past. Of course, there was the tour in 2018 that we talked about earlier, where Hold an Absence and Loathe went on a co-headliner, bringing Sleep Token along for a couple of shows as support. But it turns out that Vessel also contributed the piano motif to the song Purge from Hold an Absence's self-titled debut album.
Purge started as a track called Poetry in Motion, and it was a piano piece that was written in MIDI, and then I tried incorporating it as a piano piece that would be played alongside the band, and it just never worked, and it broke my heart because I felt like I really believed in the track. And Sleep Token an incredible band and really good friends of ours, actually recorded the piano part for Poetry in Motion, so a completely different song. And then as we kind of scrapped it and realized it was kind of unsalvageable at this point, we decided that maybe it'd be nice to have this as like a piano piece on its own. And then I kind of felt like this album had lyrically gone through so much that as an overview, it'd be nice to have like a kind of final say and look back at everything that had happened prior and kind of summarize the whole album. So it's very short, it's very subtle, but to me it holds two very important things. So.
And other than that, Sleep Token spent the rest of 2020 in hiding, waiting for everything to blow over. Come 2021, the global pandemic was still bringing live music to its knees for the foreseeable, but in the UK, the government began working with the live entertainment industry to try and run some pilot events as part of its testing. Sleep Token attempted to do some socially distant shows in March, which were called the isolation rituals, but these were ultimately cancelled due to the ongoing pandemic. One of the aforementioned pilot events with the UK government that was announced was Download Pilot. Download Pilot was essentially a much smaller version of Download Festival, being only UK acts due to the travel restrictions of the pandemic, 2 stages and no clashes. One band confirmed to make that bill was Sleep Token. Capitalising on this, on June 17th, the day before Sleep Token were due to headline the second stage at Download Pilot, they announced their second full-length album, This Place Will Become Your Tomb. And along with the album announcement, they also released its lead single, Alkaline, which they performed live for the very first time at Download Pilot. 2 further singles from the album followed. The Love You Want in August, and Fall For Me in September.
So won't you fall for me? Won't you?
Before the band released their second album, This Place Will Become Your Tomb, on September 24th, 2021. Despite the lack of touring capabilities due to the ongoing pandemic, except for the aforementioned Download Pilot, and also a headlining set at Heavy Music Awards that year, this actually proved to be a far more conventional rollout for an album for the band, intermittently releasing a handful of songs here and there before its release, along with accompanying music videos. But, as expected, there was still a concept and lore to explore with this record. Alongside each of the listed tracks were a set of numbers which essentially represent a nautical depth, starting with 914 metres for the opening track Atlantic, and increasing by a further 910 metres for each subsequent track on the album. Each of these particular depths relate to specific nautical features. For example, 914 metres attributed to the song Atlantic is the depth where anglerfish live, and at 10,924 metres, which is attributed to the closing track, Missing Limbs, is Challenger Deep, the name of the deepest known point of the ocean within the Mariana Trench, and is presumably the location of the tomb that's referred to in the album's title. Not only that, but they also included similar coordinates in other aspects of the album campaign, including on their merch, and on an opening video sequence before their headline set at the Heavy Music Awards that year.
It is what stands beside us as we gaze into nothingness.
Obviously this all ties in with the imagery of the album artwork and the single artwork, and some of the metaphors in the album's lyrics. The album brought the band's first chart positions, hitting 39 on the UK album chart, 13 on the Scottish album chart, and finally saw a short headline tour towards the end of the year in the UK and Ireland with support from A.A. Williams. The start of 2022 saw the band get their first magazine cover feature, which was for Metal Hammer. In January, they had a special show planned called A Ritual from the Room Below, where Vessel would perform alone alongside their backing vocalist, Espera. However, this had to be pushed back, initially to March 26th, before another reschedule to finally go ahead on April 29th. They also released a cover of Is It Really You by Loathe, a track taken from their 2020 sophomore album, I Let It In and It Took Everything. This would only be the start of their busiest touring year to date, no doubt making up for all that lost time from the past couple of years. In May, they joined Architects on their UK tour as opening support alongside Malevolence, followed by a set at Download Festival, a tour in Australia supporting North Lane in June, a set at Bloodstock, and a run across the US supporting In This Moment towards the tail end of the year. Still, at some point during that year, the band somehow managed to put together their next release of material, which we all know by now would prove to be the beginning of their rise to stardom. With a headline tour announced and on the horizon for the beginning of 2023, Sleep Token started the year with the release of 2 songs across the space of 2 days. They released Chokehold on January 5th, and they released The Summoning on January 6th. Whilst both songs are brilliant and continue with the unconventional approach that the band are pretty much known for, taking different twists and turns and being against the norm, it's for this very reason that people did not expect for things to pan out the way that they did. Both songs helped the band to elevate to new heights, especially The Summoning. Now, for a song that lasts over 6 minutes, dips into different genres and takes different twists and turns the way that The Summoning does, on paper it shouldn't ever really escape the confines of their core fan base and heavy music fans in general. But there was one moment in the song which picked up traction, especially on TikTok, and went viral. And it is this moment in that song that would help change the course of the band's career forever.
Did I mistake you for a sign from God?
In just a few weeks, Sleep Token's popularity and Spotify monthly listeners soared to unprecedented heights. Especially for a band that's anonymous and goes against the grain of everything that should work and should make a band popular. 3 more singles taken from the album soon followed. Granite, Aqua Regia, and Vor. And with the release of the latter on February 16th, 2023, the band also announced their 3rd full-length album, Take Me Back to Eden. In March, they were nominated for a Heavy Music Award for Best UK Artist. They also had a set at Takedown Festival that year, held on April 8th. Another single, called DYWTYLM, which stands for Do You Wish That You Love Me, followed on April 20th.
It's getting harder to be myself.
Which acted as the final track to come from the album prior to its release. And on May 19th, the band went on to release their 3rd full-length studio album, Take Me Back to Eden. This was the first release from the band where they didn't work with their previous producer, George Lever. Instead, they worked with Carl Baum, who in the past has worked with bands like Bullet for My Valentine, While She Sleeps, Fight Star, and also Bring Me the Horizon. It was also at the time of the album's release where we saw the next evolution of Vessel's mask. With this new mask, the area around the mouthpiece was removed completely for both promos and shows, and was covered in a red and almost blood-like pattern. Much like their debut album Sundowning, the band also included some runes in the imagery for the album Take Me Back to Eden, spelling the album name out on the cover. Each track also has its own accompanying unique creature, which can be seen on a pedestal on the visualizers for the songs too. This album would also mark the end of an apparent trilogy that's been going on with their 3 albums so far, with the closing track, Euclid, using the same melody and lyrics from Sundowning's opening track, The Night Does Not Belong to God, bringing the trio of records full circle. On May 26th, the 2023 Heavy Music Awards went ahead, where the band won the award for Best UK Artist. But it would turn out in the next few days that even bigger achievements were coming their way. On May 31st, the band announced a one-off headline show at London's OVO Arena in Wembley, which would be held on December 16th to close out their 2023. That show went on sale a few days later on June 2nd and sold out within the space of just 10 minutes. With a capacity of 12,500, this would mark the band's biggest show to date. For comparison, the band's biggest show in London at that point in their career was earlier that year in January at the Eventim Apollo. That venue has a capacity of 5,000, making this more than double that size in just the space of a few months. The band then went on to support Slipknot in Germany at the end of June, and they continued their summer with some intense touring throughout the US, the UK, and Europe. There were also plenty of festival slots during that summer too, including a set at Radar Festival, sets at Reading and Leeds Festival on the Festival Republic stage, and a slot at Riot Fest. Afterwards, the band took a short-lived but well-deserved break before heading back on the road again for a few shows in Germany. These all acted as somewhat of a warm-up show before their final show of 2023 and their biggest show of their career so far, the sold-out headline show at London's OVO Arena in Wembley. With a bigger stage and show comes a bigger production, with the band pulling out a mammoth 18-song set to the table, with all the theatrics and spectacle taken to the next level. It's also a show where the band debuted brand new masks for members 2, 3 and 4, moving on from their minimalistic cloaked faces to something you'd be more accustomed to find on a band like Slipknot or Mushroomhead. And whilst the show was undoubtedly one of celebration and triumph, it unfortunately wasn't one that didn't come with any setbacks. Midway through the set, Vessel lost his voice, the band left the stage, returned shortly after with a member of their crew, who came to the microphone asking the fans to sing along as Vessel was struggling due to being sick.
So, Vessel can't sing, but you guys can. So you guys need to sing with us. We're doing the set, he's staying on stage. Maybe he'll do a couple of lines here and there, but he's not well, so we're doing the set. You guys gotta be loud, okay? Yeah?
And the fans delivered on that. After a few songs, Vessel managed to get his voice back, complete the set, and close the biggest show of their careers so far. This show would also turn out to be a record-breaking event. The show brought in the highest gross sales in OVO Arena's sale history, a record which was shared by Download Festival booking agent and Live Nation promoter Andy Copping. Something else unexpected happened towards the end of 2023 too.
I am 2, and this is an offering from drumming.
The first ever recorded interview with a member of Sleep Token. 2 went on to drumming YouTube channel Drummio to perform a few songs live, but also to answer a few questions about his drumming influences and technique. Though he verbally answered the questions asked of him by the interviewer, to keep the anonymity, they put some effects over his voice to mask it.
I've always personally taken a lot of inspiration from the UK dance music scene.
Now, understandably, you may be asking yourself, how do you even begin to top a year like Sleep Token had in 2023? Well, you can start by finding out that you had an album which pulled in more streams than Metallica, the biggest metal band on the planet. That's exactly what happened with Take Me Back to Eden, with reports in early 2024 confirming that on Spotify, Sleep Token outperformed Metallica with streams of their 2023 record, 72 Seasons. Even just going off each of the 2 albums' most popular single track, The Summoning by Sleep Token pulled in almost 92 million, whilst Metallica's title track from 72 Seasons pulled 2/3 of that same amount at around 62 million. The band also confirmed on February 14th that they had signed a new deal with RCA Records, which is a label subsidiary owned by Sony Music. Sadly, things would take a turn for the worst when a fan appeared to dox and leak personal information of one of the members, including their birth certificate and home address. Where would you even go to obtain a document like a birth certificate, and more importantly, why? Following this, the band would quickly wipe their social media accounts clean and change the bio of their profile to say nothing lasts forever. As you can probably guess, this sparked a lot of panic with fans, worrying that this fan slipping out personal and sensitive information ruined the band completely for everyone else. Thankfully, that wasn't the case, and the band started announcing new tour dates for 2024. In April, they joined Bring Me the Horizon during their tour of Australia as main support, with Make Them Suffer and Dane also both slotted as support throughout that run. Then, at the end of that month, they moved on to Las Vegas to perform at Sick New World. That set at Sick New World would actually kickstart their The Teeth of God tour, a headline run across the US and Canada with support from Empire State Bastard throughout May. On August 19th, the band started to expand on their lore and their universe with the announcement of a pre-order of their very first graphic novel, also called The Teeth of God. At the time of me making this video, the graphic novel hasn't been released yet, so it's hard to say what would actually be in there and how it would expand and what would be told, but it is going to start being shipped out to fans on November 20th. Also to happen in November, Sleep Token announced a support for the Paris date of Linkin Park's Reunion World Tour. Along with this, the release of the aforementioned graphic novel will tie in nicely with what will probably be their final tour of 2024. The band are doing a run across the UK and Europe in November and December, bringing along Bill Murray as support. And for now, that's exactly where we're at with Sleep Token's story. Despite going against most conventions of what would make a band successful, Sleep Token have decided to give as little as possible, and in turn they've reaped some of the biggest rewards, quickly becoming one of the biggest names in rock and heavy music in recent history. They've heavily resonated with peers in their scene, from Corey Taylor of Slipknot.
When I first heard Sleep Token, I was like, what the hell is this, man? I love the fact that nobody really knows who they are. They don't want to be known, you know? I mean, there are hints of early Slipknot there. I can remember sitting down and just going, Jesus, this is really good.
To Rob Halford of Judas Priest.
There's a lot of importance being put in the direction of this band called Sleep Token.
I love them, them.
They're a really curious band in what they're putting out in terms of all of these different textures. You know, they're very difficult to pin down. That's what I find intriguing as a musician. They have a thing called Vessel. You know?
Yeah, lead singer Vessel.
One day the Metal God and Vessel will take a selfie together. I predict that. So there's something cool.
To Will Ramos of Lorna Shore.
I'm going to say it. I love Sleep Token.
Nice, man.
If you guys are listening right now, I love you guys. I was just talking to your manager. I was like, you guys are my favorite band. And so, you know,
cool.
I like to be able to sing. I don't get to sing often because people are like, yo, Will's just the screaming guy. Yes. But I love singing, and like Sleep Token is the perfect, like, hey, I can kind of fit in there if it's in my range. So shout out to Sleep Token. Keep making amazing music, and I will keep listening to it and doing covers of it.
And Alpha Wolf dressing up as them for one of their shows. And the fandom has reached fever pitch, from TikToks, streamer reactions, fan-made merch and artwork, fans cosplaying, and even a bluegrass parody band called Token Grass.
Y'all got me in a chokehold.
Sleep Token's accelerating ascension to superstardom doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon, so who knows where they'll be in a year from now. That might be a video for another time. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Sleep Token's history as a band. I really enjoyed putting this together, and I actually want to do more of these band story deep dives in the future. Please let me know what you think in the comments, any feedback, good or bad, and if there's a particular band you want me to do in the future, again, please let me know in the comments. If you want to support me and the podcast, then please hit subscribe and hit that like button and share this video where you can. I also do weekly podcast episodes where I interview bands and people in the industry, so keep an eye out for that. And there's also a Patreon and there's a web store for anyone interested in going the extra mile. The links to everything that I've just mentioned can be found in the description of this episode, or you can head to itsnotaphase.co.uk. Thank you again so much for watching. Hopefully I'll catch you on the next one, and remember, it's not a phase, it's a lifestyle.